Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. How are you today? How it a be for our side? Chinedum, good evening. Esther, good evening. Olo, good evening, Remy. Good evening, Joseph. How was our day? How was our day? How was our day? Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Viola, good evening. Good evening, Esther. We had a good day. Hope your day was not as hectic as mine. Makes sense. I like as your day makes sense. All right. All right. So, good evening, Timile. Good evening, Hillary. Yeah, I'm good, Abraham. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Kingsley K. Who is Mr. Kingsley? Good evening. Midi. My day was good. Chidinma. Happy Children's Day, everyone. Oh boy. Good evening, Adenike. Good evening, Precious. Good evening. Good evening, Sarah. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. This is product management class. This is product management class. This is product.
Hello, can you hear me, please? Can I confirm you can hear me? All right. Hello and good evening, beautiful evening to everyone, wherever you find yourself tonight. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, within Nigeria and outside of the country. My name is Kingsley, and with me tonight on the couch is my co-facilitator Nancy Baba Ali. Once again, you are welcome to Digital Skill Up Africa Project Management class. It's that time where we discuss issues relating to project management. I'm glad to be here, and I hope you are glad as well to be here tonight. All right, yesterday we delved into project monitoring and control, where we discussed quite clearly why we need to monitor and control our projects. We did mention that monitoring has to do with regular observation of project activities to keep track of all we are doing about the project, while control has to do with a measure of damage control, more or less to say something has happened and then we try to remedy or put a limitation to the extent at which that damage has occurred. Yeah, Lara, my day has been wonderful. It's been a very busy, very busy day. So once again, let me just roll back and say, everyone, tonight you are welcome. Okay? So I may not be able to call all the names I can find on the chat box, but surely I'm saying good evening to everyone and you're welcome. And I'm sure that you had a good day. I know in some places it could have been a very busy day. All right, so once again, we have to move at the speed of light. Thank you, Sarah. Happy Children's Day. We can't forget to say that. Okay, so to as many who had a brief holiday today, I hope you rested well. And to as many who went to work, okay, I also believe it's been a very good and fruitful day. All right, so good evening, everyone, and let's roll straight up because there's a whole lot to cover tonight. Okay, yesterday we looked at earned value. Okay, we saw PV, planned value, actual cost, and end value. So there were a whole lot we had to try to talk about yesterday. Okay, and Ojo kicks off tonight's session with a question. If the planned value is what should be cost you to complete a task, is PV then within a budget of a project or a total budget of the project? All right, I would say this to you. The planned value is within the scope of the budget. So it's not the entire project budget, but it's a fraction of the total budget where you try to plan your budget for a specific items or activities or tasks that you need to execute at a point. Okay, so yesterday one of our participants did give us an example of she had 170,000 naira. Okay, I get, yeah, sure, I think, yeah. And there was a need to budget for something that needed to be done, and let's say a furniture maker making up a wardrobe for a client, and at that point you've actually planned that you're going to spend 170,000 naira from that project. Okay, but for one reason or the other you managed to spend 120. So 170 was actually you your planned budget. You estimated that it was going to cost you um, that particular amount, and for one reason or the other, you couldn't um, get that resolved. And so, and yeah, so we talked about planned value at that point. So, and the actual cost is was also discussed yesterday, which has no direct relationship with planned value, but um, it's exactly what you've spent on the project so far is your actual cost. Okay, so then okay, I can see um, in the chat box. So I'm just trying to take a look at the chat box and see some of the things we need to just an overview so that we can kick off tonight's session. Okay, okay, okay. So I can see here. Yeah, sure, Philip, thank you. End value remains zero until you've actually done something in your project. Okay. So yeah, any other question? Okay, yeah, Ndukuba, thank you for that response. Okay. So what actually determines the behind schedule here, as we can see in the diagram, is it's actually determined by comparing what was actually planned to be completed with what has actually been completed. Okay. So most of the time, um, you can also refer planned value as your budgeted cost of work. Okay, the work you have scheduled, that budget you've prepared at that time. Okay, so let's just think finance. Think about money. Think about cost. Okay, think about the financial aspect of your project at this time. Okay, let's think about that. Okay, so we're looking at where we say that planned value actually represents that budget for the work which you have planned to be completed at a specific point in time. So you've not actually spent the money, you just budgeted it. Okay, I'm going to spend this. Like yesterday, I did say, I mentioned that I was going to take Sassanel to US, and I'm going to give her um, a treat, a Domino pizza, prepare her passport, and all that. Okay, I've not taken her yet, but I just planned to do that. I've estimated a particular amount of money, XYZ amount of money. Okay, so how much work in monetary terms you should have done by a certain date according to your project plan. That's planned value. I'm explaining it in another term tonight. So I don't know what you could have understood it yesterday to be, but I'm bringing in another terminology tonight in a layman's understanding, just to tell you that um, how much work you have budgeted for in monetary terms, okay, that you should have done at a certain date according to your project plan. That's it. So then we looked at earned value. Okay, earned value is the budgeted cost of work that you have performed. Okay, so that budget you made for the actual work which you completed at a point in time. Okay, so the value of work that has been accomplished, regardless of how much was planned, or how much it was actually going to cost. So you have spent this amount of money. So that is it. Okay. Yeah, sure. We're talking about finance now, econometrics. Okay. So we are looking at the econometrics of project management. That's what we're doing tonight. Okay. Yeah. So you're looking at earned value, how much work in monetary terms that you have done. Okay. So, but planned value is that you should have done. That's planned value. Actual value that you have done. Planned value that you should have done. I think you can understand that now. Okay. That you should have done, that's planned value. No, Remy, you've not missed anything. We just started. Okay. So planned value, you should have in monetary terms. I would have spent 100,000 naira. Actual cost, I have spent 100,000 naira. Okay. And then actual cost is how much money you have spent to achieve the work you have done. Okay. That's your actual cost. Okay. So I think it's clear. Then there was a question about behind schedule. Okay. So it's actually a variance. Okay. So let's say you are behind schedule when the value of work that you've actually completed, that is the end value, is now less than the value of the work that you planned to complete. Okay. So you didn't achieve all that you intended by your planning. Okay. So that's when you are behind schedule. I hope you understand that. Okay. Yeah, sure, Joel, you're definitely going to have that. Okay. But uh, like I said, for me, when you have the understanding, you can easily relate a formula in your head. But when you focus more on, let's look at a formula that we can, you may not really understand it. But when you have the understanding within, on the inside of you, it makes it a lot more easier. You can wake up anytime and you can talk about it. So that is it. Planned value, you should have in monetary terms. End value, work actually completed, okay? And then actual cost, we've talked about it as well. So the amount you've actually spent up until that time in the project. And then behind schedule, your planned value, your earned value is less than the planned value. That is it. So that's the mathematics involved in it. I actually planned to spend 100,000 and I couldn't meet up. I didn't meet up. So the time, what I actually achieved, the work that was actually achieved was lesser. Okay. So that is it. So we are also definitely we're going to talk about a few things later, but let's just have that understanding. Okay. So let's move. Okay. So let's talk about the calculations now. So we move straight to the calculation. So I'm not going to now you have an understanding of the key definitions. So let's go forward to talk about the metrics involved. Okay. So there's what we call the cost variance. Okay. And the cost performance index. Okay. So cost variance, we talked about variance a little yesterday, where we said that the cost variance is earned value less actual cost, or we can say budgeted cost of work planned, okay, and okay, against the budgeted cost of all work that you have scheduled. Okay, so that is the variance. Okay, so PV is what you should have spent in monetary terms. AC is what you have spent, and EVM is the money spent to achieve the work that you have done, what you have actually achieved with the resources that you planned, that you had. Okay, so from the actual cost. So that is it. Okay, so like I did mention yesterday, if you follow clearly, when you tag along, you would get a clearer understanding of all things. Okay. So that is just it. So when you have a negative variance where SV is negative, it means that you are behind schedule. Okay. So that is it. So when SP, okay, or SV or um schedule variance SV, if it is negative, it means that you are behind schedule. That's Joel. I hope you understand that. Now you can relate to the previous diagram. Okay. So, and then any deviations from the planned work is not a measure of the changes in cost. I just want us to have that at the back of our mind. So sometimes where there is a deviation, it's not necessarily that it was due to cost. It could be due to any other constraint. Okay, so you have that understanding. So like we said earlier, end value, planned value. Now you can relate these two terminologies as one should be and the other is already. So the why I use the term here BCWP is the budgeted cost of work. That's all tasks or activities that has been completed or performed as of a specific reporting time frame. Okay, so that's your budgeted cost of work. Okay, all right. And then we have the budgeted cost of work scheduled. When you say scheduled, it means it's something that you have planned to do. You've not done it. So, and that is the budgeted cost of work scheduled, which is all tasks or activities which you have planned to perform as of a specific reporting date. So that is just all we've been saying in a nutshell. Okay. So please have at the back of your mind that planned value, PV, or planned level is the same thing. Okay. So then we have schedule performance index. Okay. So that schedule performance index is the ratio of the work you have performed to the work that you have scheduled. Okay. So we can see that now. So SPI, which is your scheduled performance index, is um, end value added to the planned value. Okay. So when you add, remember the variance is when you um, when you subtract end value from the planned value is your scheduled variance. But the SPI is where you add your earned value to the planned value. Okay. All right. So when the ratio is greater than 1, it means that you are ahead. Okay. But if it is less, it means you are under. Okay. Under budgeted or under schedule or behind schedule. So that's just it's just the same thing. Okay. All right. Then let's explain the next. Okay. So then we have what we call minimum funds. Okay. Like what do you understand by the term minimum funds? Means that the funds that you need, okay, if things do not get worse. So it gets to a point where with this specific amount of money, um, we can still manage. We can still just things. We can still be in control. Okay, and then when we talk about funds needed, well, okay, so let me end off with the minimum funds, which is your original total budget, the total budget. Okay, less your cost performance index. Okay. So while the funds that needed are um, your cost performance index, which you have to multiply with your scheduled performance index. Okay. You divide by the total budget, which means that is your funds, the funds that you need to avoid things getting worse at the same time. So level of slippage is okay. Okay, I will, Lowell, I will. So level of slippage is at that point where things already getting out of hand. You can barely control, okay, things from getting worse. So you're already sleeping. The project is almost already getting out of your control. Okay, so when we talk about SPI, I did mention SPI. I said that SPI is your scheduled performance index, is a ratio of what you have performed to what you have scheduled. Okay, so let's say you have scheduled um, 10 tasks and you have performed 12 tasks. So the ratio 10 to 12, when you divide, if it is less than 1, then you can see you're under budget. But if it's greater than 1, it means that you are ahead of schedule. So your project can still go on. I hope we can get that understanding. So, all right. So then let's look at a diagrammatic explanation or from the end value, the variance, and your management reserve. Okay, when we talk about management reserve, let me just start from there and then I will move a little bit backward to scheduled end value variance. Okay, so management reserve is just like saying where you have fuel in your vehicle. Okay, and you have E, which is empty, you have F, which is full. Okay, there's a point it gets to E, it's empty. Then you go to reserve. Okay, so at that point where um, you have to now dip your hands into the reserve. So there's normally in every project there's supposed to be a cushioning effect. Okay, that there's a particular amount of money you set aside um, just to avoid issues, maybe things from getting worse, or like we just kept these funds for like counterpart funding, okay, where in case if things just gets worse, we can fall back to these resources, okay, your management reserve, okay. And then let's talk about scheduled variance, which is actually the difference between your EV and your PV, which we've explained in the previous calculation. Okay, so if you have a positive um, variance, SV, it means your project is well ahead. Okay, but if you have a negative, it means your project is behind, right? And then if it is at 0, remember we said it's on schedule, so it's you go ahead with you're still on point to meet up with your project. So when you look at the curve, you can see that your scheduled variance, which is actually the difference between EV and PV, okay, and then remember we have schedule, and remember you have cost. So schedule is just like this is what you've actually planned to do, okay, and remember should be and it is. So should be is where planned value, and it is EV, okay. So is reserve the same as miscellaneous or contingency funds? Okay, let me say here that when you look at your project, like the entire project is going to cost you 100 million, and you know clearly that it's going to be 100 million regardless, and you just tell this project sponsor that is 110, for example, 110 million. Okay, now what that 10 million does for you is a cushioning effect for your project. You're not going to steal that money. Okay, the reason why you are bringing up that fund is in case of anything happens, in case worst case scenario, you have like 10 million cool to work with. Okay, so it's a good way to plan. So after all your budgets, there should be something you set aside to cushion this project. because you may not have the the flexibility to go back to the sponsor and say, hey, Summer, um, we are running short of funds, and it's really going to be very, very uneasy, both to yourself, the project manager, and also to as many that are on that project with you. Okay, so um, then when we talk about the cost variance is that difference between the earned value and, yeah, in case of unforeseen circumstances. Yeah, yeah, sure. Okay, so that what, so it's part of your planning. Okay, yeah, buffer funds. Yeah, just my I'm happy that there are a whole lot of vocabulary that are coming up tonight for this. I think so. I think why it looks easier tonight is because we did a whole lot of groundwork yesterday, a lot of explanations, and it looks clearer now, I think, with understanding. So the difference between your earned value and your actual cost is your what, your cost variance. Okay, so what is variance? Difference. Okay, variance is just difference. That's the English. Okay, so if you have a positive cost variance, it means um, if you have a negative, if you have a positive, okay, it's under budget, negative over budget is the other way around. Okay, I think that's just a typographical error. Okay, so if you have a positive, then it's um of budget, and then negative on the budget. But if it's at zero, then yeah, it's just grammar. Yeah, it's just grammar. Okay, all right. So I think okay. So I'm with you. Let's just see. I'm looking at the chat box to see. Yeah, in that case, the 10 million should be used judiciously. That's the point. Okay. Even when you don't, at the end of the day, if the 10 million is not used, for example, there is, it happens that there was no need for it at the end of the day, then the funds should be returned to the sponsor. It's not for you to spend it. Okay. So don't be greedy and don't be a bad project manager. Okay. All right. Okay. So if your CV is positive, okay, you're under budget, means that the value of work that you have completed is actually greater than the actual cost that what you've spent. Okay, so that is it. So it means that you've actually spent less money, okay, than what was budgeted for, which you have accomplished, which is actually a favorable outcome. But if you have a negative CV, which is, it means that you've actually over budgeted, which also tells you that it's quite an unfavorable condition to be in, because the value of the work that you have completed is actually less than your actual cost. So it's very important to understand. Let me reiterate here that a negative um, a negative cost variance is actually good for your project. Okay, because it's better to be over budget, okay, than to be under budget. And that is true. Okay, because if you are under budget, then it means you need extra funding to complete the project. But if you're over budgeting, it means that you need to return some funds back to the sponsor of the project, which is actually very good. Okay, so if your CV is zero, then you are on budget. So that is where it should be. Okay, it means that your EV is actually equal to the AC. Okay, so it means, for example, actual cost is 10 million, and you actually got the value of which that 10 million was used. So and that is it. Okay, so with a positive CV you're good. Okay, negative CV you're bad. Okay, so you're really spending more. Okay, you're really spending more. Okay, all right. So Where are we? I think that's it for variance in SV and CV. Okay, so let's things that we need to note. Okay, what is actually the problem? Okay. I think here, please don't mind the dashes. I think there are double dashes here, which maybe I should have changed one to like a column, a semicolon, just to buttress for that. I hope we can see that clearly. Okay. So when you have when the CV is 0, it means that EV is actually equal to AC. I think that's well understood. Okay. And then when your CV is negative, okay, when CV is negative over budget, okay, so what you've spent, your EV is actually less than your AC. So there's some money to return back to the sponsor. Okay. But if it's positive, it means that you are actually you've actually spent um the EV, okay, is actually greater than your actual cost, than what you spent. So you spent less money than what was budgeted for, okay, that you have actually accomplished. Okay. CV is cost variance. Okay. Remember, SV is schedule. When we talk about schedule, we talk about planning. Okay. When we talk about cost, already cost has to do with like actual cost. So your cost variance is relative to two variables, which is earned value and actual cost. Then your scheduled variance, which is SV, is related to two variables, which is earned value and planned value. Okay. So I hope it's clearer now. Okay. All right. So okay. So all right. So let's look at some of the things we need to note when we're doing the variance analysis. What actually is the cause of the variance? The scheduled variance or the cost variance? What is the cause? Okay. You do your fishbone analysis. Okay. So does it have any impact on other efforts? Okay. So what corrective action is planned or underway? All right. And what is the impact of the variance on time, cost, and performance, on the constraints, okay, project constraints, okay? Yes, please. Yes, please, Informer. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please. And what are the expected results of your corrective action? So, side by side, as you are looking at, where's OSV? I don't think there's any OSV here. 0. Okay, when it is 0, that is your EV is equal to PV. It means it is 0. Okay, it means that your project is actually on schedule. Okay. All right. So 0, it's at 0. Okay. Ufoma is asking, what is fishbone analysis? Fishbone is actually used as a root cause analysis. Okay, where you try to, wow. Okay, for the purpose of my participants in class or my students, let me go back to the previous slide. I think I'm just going to take this one more time and then we move on. Okay, so what we're saying tonight is that we have two variances here. Okay, cost variance, for example. Okay, I understand. I understand. Okay, so let's say if the CV is positive, okay, it means that you are under budget. So let's say the value of work which you have completed is actually greater than the cost, what you spent. It means that you've actually spent less money than what was budgeted for. Okay. Um, let's say you needed to purchase, let's say, 100 tissues for a hotel. Okay. And for one reason or the other, Yes, please. Sarah, what's actually contradictory? Yes, please. What is actually contradictory? Can I confirm? All right. So, for example, you're actually managing a project for you're building a website. Okay. At the end of the first month, you analyze your performance. You analyze your performance. Okay. So, you actually plan to complete the home page, and then we have an about us page as well. Okay. For those who are familiar with a web page. Okay. Now, you actually budgeted $2,000, for example, or $2,000 for that particular activity, homepage and the about us page. Okay. So for one reason or the other, okay. So when we say the end value is that you actually completed the homepage and the about us page as you have planned. So the value of the work which you performed is actually the $2,000 because you budgeted for it, that was the plan, and you completed it. Then the actual cost is, for example, you did everything which you needed to do, very efficient with your resources, and then you found some cheaper, like maybe when you were purchasing some photos that you were going to use for the web page, um, you ended up not spending exactly, you had a balance of 200, for example. So you bought it at $1,800, everything $1,800. Okay. I would advise if you can just listen so that you pick the explanation so that you don't ask, that's why we're asking too many questions at the same time. So just listen so that you can get the explanation. Okay. Now, remember, your CV is your EV less your AC. That's your cost variance. Okay. So a positive cost variance of $200 means that you are actually under budget by $200 for the work you have completed, which is actually good. Okay. Now, when we talk about a negative cost, it means that you have actually over budgeted. Now, you planned to complete the web page, homepage, and the about us page, okay, for the same $2,000. And your earned value, $2,000, which was the work was completed, homepage, and the about us page. But however, you encountered some unexpected technical issues and you had to hire a specialist and spent more on, let's say, maybe you bought extra software licenses just to accommodate, to make sure that you complete that particular web page, the home page and the about us page. And then you ended up spending $2,500, okay, to complete those two pages. So at this point, your CV is less, that is minus $500, which means you have over budgeted. So you have a negative cost variance of $500 because at that point you needed to hire extra hand to complete the work and then you spent extra money. There you had to over budget, which is not actually good for your project. Okay. So here, under budgeting has helped your project, while over budgeting has added extra costs to your project. Then it means that you have now, when the person that talked about fishbone analysis, it means that you now need to ask yourself, what exactly caused this problem? Okay, there was an error which I couldn't correct. I needed to hire an expert to assist me to correct it. And in trying to do that, I had to pay him an extra $500, which is $2,500. So you over budgeted 500, but in under budgeting, you saved $200. Okay. So under budgeting here is good for your business or for your project, while over budgeting is bad for your project because you over budgeted, you overspent rather than what? Underspending. I hope it is clearer now. If if you can pay attention, then we may not need to make some mistakes here and there, because I'm trying to answer almost every question, because if you don't understand it, it's going to be very difficult. So we would go on a short break, and for our attendance, when we return, we would only take questions towards the end of the session so that participants can learn, get clearer understanding, and then we take these questions towards the end if you are finding it difficult to understand. So you can put down or take down your questions, and then I would create a window where we can ask questions. Okay. So just to reiterate, under budget is good for your project, and over budgeting doesn't help your project, except in cases where you have to apply a change management, or you now need to apply for if you had a contingency fund somewhere, which we talked about earlier, but it's still not quite good for our project. So let's go on a break. When we return, we will delve into the second half of the class. Okay. All right. See you at the other half of the class. Thank you. All right, welcome and welcome back to class. I think we can now go ahead. If you're back, can I know that you are back so that we move at the speed of light? Can I confirm that you are back? Thank you, Ajo Priscilla. Thank you for welcoming back. And yeah, there are a whole lot of understanding you need to put into the econometric process. Okay, all right. So I hope we can get a clear understanding tonight. All right. So welcome and let's move on. We actually were talking about variance and trying to put um, a peg around what could be the issues that caused the variance. And that is the point where we need to evaluate our project processes, procedures, methodologies, and track the progress level of what we have actually done. Because if there are variances, something must have caused the variance, okay? So sometimes it could be due to your estimations, the cycle in the phase you're involved in. Is it at the initiation phase? Is it at the execution phase? Is it at the monitoring and control phase? So it also can be determined by the length of the project, how accurate are your estimates, and what exactly is the time frame, okay, the timelines that you have in that particular phase of the project life cycle. So there could we can say it may not just be um, one item causing the variance. Okay, it could even be multiple. It could be more than one. It could be two. It could be three. Okay, so a whole lot of reasons could be termed as factors. Okay, sometimes you may be taking data. Let's say geospatial. You're taking geospatial data, and it's supposed to last for 3 days. And once it rains, you may not be able to take accurate readings as at when you need to. So that could be a factor. Okay. So we're just trying to put around one or two reasons or issues that could emanate that can cause variances, either scheduled variance or cost variance in our project. So sometimes they can be controlled, they cannot be controlled almost immediately, but they would just happen. Okay. So when they do, it all depends on how we are able to manage, okay, how we're able to control at the end of the day. So it's very key. It goes a long way to determine what we are actually doing. So let's talk a little about management reserve. I think I mentioned that earlier, okay, where we talked about management reserve. It's actually that someone said budget padding, but I will explain it here so that you will see the difference between the context of where we use budget padding. Okay, when we say budget padding, a lot of minds are cast to what it's been done in some spheres of politics, but that's not where we are tonight. As a project manager, we're talking about that padding that you actually add for to take care of unexpected costs that are within the scope of the project. So it's not actually an opportunity for you to change the project scope. It is not actually part of the cost estimate, but it is usually added by the upper management, not the project manager. And why I do say this is at the beginning of your project, you should think out of the box. Okay. So why we say not the project manager is let it not seem as if you have an ulterior motive in trying to add a particular amount to your project. But if you can discuss adequately with the upper management and give reasons as to why it should be added, then why not? So it's not at the proxy of the project manager to do that. Okay, so we can always control that. Okay, so then it's a time where we talk a little. Let's take about 5 to 7 minutes. Let's talk. Okay, your questions. Yeah, it could be the project sponsor. Okay, most especially it could be there are different levels of your project. So, okay, because the funding is not coming directly from you. So whoever is responsible to cater for that padding that should come into your project are the persons that we're talking about here. Okay, so that's the upper management that we are referring to. Okay, all right. So some projects can have boards of directors. Okay, so even the sponsor doesn't just take. So sometimes it's not just the project sponsor that provides funding. Okay, so there may be one or two layers or levels that bring about that. Okay, all right. So all right, thank you, Bisola. I really appreciate your response. Okay, so any other question? Then any other questions? All right. I don't know if there are questions anywhere you are not clear with anything so far we have talked about. You can ask your question, then we move over to the next slide. Okay, Oluwafemi is asking, is there anything like marking up of price in project management? Marking up of price. Yeah, it's actually very common. Okay. Especially when you have organizations that deliver projects, especially where you have sellers, you have vendors or contractors. Okay. So that markup is actually the amount that they add to the direct cost of the particular project so that they can be able to determine the selling price of, or just to cover for possibly maybe overhead costs, or to actually get their profit margin. Okay. So it's not new, it's part of the process. Okay. So if, for example, a project cost let's say 10,000 naira, and the company decides to add 25% markup price, so it means that that's about um, you're adding um, plus or minus 10,000 to 0.25%, okay, of that particular cost. So you will now be having about let's say there are about 12,500 to it. So, and that would now be the difference. That's the markup, just to cover for the overhead cost, and then they still retain their profits. Because if they decide to sell at 10,000 naira, it is going to definitely affect the project itself, the product that they are churning out in the market, and they would be the ones on deficit. Okay, so it's very important. Okay, so it's actually global best practice. Okay, so it's not an issue. Okay, so based on global practice, is there a specific percentage of the main budget I should allocate as a buffer fund? I think that's just part of what we're saying here. Okay, where you don't want to be in deficits in any way, and you still want to be in business. Okay, so you can add 5%, you can add 10%, but like I said earlier, it's not money that at the end of the day you're going to spend that 5% because nobody touched it. Then it now becomes your own. No, you have to return that money because it's just like a buffer. Okay, in case something happens. Okay, catered for the project and has extra funds unused. So I think present value. That's not like present value. Um, planned value. Planned value. What's present value, please? Is it the same value as cost value? I don't think I have not mentioned. I didn't mention present value. So maybe Olatunde, you can explain better what you mean. Okay. Okay. And value is not the same thing with um what do you say, actual cost. Okay. So earned value is simply the budgeted cost of the work you've actually completed. Okay. Okay. I hope you get that clearly. The budgeted cost of the work you actually completed. Okay. All right. But actual cost is the money you've actually spent or incurred on the work. Okay. Work actually completed till date. They are not the same. Okay. In monetary terms, they are not the same. Okay. All right. So I think one more minute and then we go back to our study tonight. Where okay, I understand. Toby Loba, all right. Yes, we said something about where you're building a simple web page, and you have to do home page and the about us page. Okay, for one reason or the other, the under budget aspect is where you were able to save out of the $2,000, you saved 200 because something you were supposed to buy, like the stock photos you were supposed to buy at that point, instead of the cost was supposed to make it up to $2,000, but at the end you finally spent 1.8. You had 200 left. So that's under budgeting, which is good for your business, okay, for your project. But over budgeting, he had to hire a technical person because something failed in between. There was a technical issue. He needed to purchase an extra software license and also pay the technician for supporting to do that work. That resulted in extra $500, which meant he had to spend 2,500, but the real budget was 2,000. So that's over budgeting. Okay, I hope you understand. Sasanel, yeah, what's your question, please? A whole lot of questions are coming up on the chat box, so I'm missing some of them. Okay, Sasanel is wondering how under budgeting is perceived as better when over budgeting can make excess funds available for the project. Now, don't mix this up, okay? Please, this is in variance, okay? This is variance, all right? Now, we are looking at a situation where I know where you're coming from. You're coming from the angle of um, saving extra funds. Now, in Nigeria, let's don't say over budgeting. Let me don't use that overspending. So overspending is what you term here as over budgeting because you spent more than um, the resources were supposed to take for that particular activity. Then under budgeting, why I think we're looking at it from the English language aspect of it, literal meaning of under budgeting. That's not what it means here. Under budget here, in terms of cost variance, okay, is saying simply that you you were able to save up an extra box for yourself on that project. Maybe for one reason or the other, what you budgeted, you ended up not spending all of them. Okay, so if for example you're still not so clear, um you can always look for online resources, maybe ask some questions on Google or Wikipedia, anywhere. Please clearly explain more about under budgeting and over budgeting. Okay, I think it can also help. Okay, all right. Yes, any other question so that we have like 2 minutes and then we could. So we are talking about cost variance here. So please let's relate it in terms of cost variance analysis. So in cost variance analysis, where you have um, you're saying that it's positive, okay? Because under budget is positive, then over budget is negative. All right, meaning that your actual cost was actually lower than your budgeted cost, meaning that the project is under budget, is under the budget, is that is it's cushioned well in your budget, okay, which is favorable for you. Okay, it means that you've performed better in terms of finances and savings. So it's okay for your project. Okay, it can be any time in the project. It's not, it mustn't be, it can even be a sub inside your project. Okay, you may have like 5 deliverables to meet up with in a project, so it may even be one out of many. Okay, so it's not compulsory it must be the entire budget, but for that particular task you are doing, okay, So please, yeah, Bisola, please. I hope I just believe it's like there's a mix. Some of us are really mixing these things up. We are not talking about general project management now. See this study in terms of cost variance analysis. Okay. You're analyzing variance in terms of your cost. Okay. We didn't have any issue with scheduled variance. Where we're having issues now is cost variance, negative, positive. So we're not gonna stay there. Okay. Honestly, yeah, honestly, it's just understanding. Okay. When you understand it, then it can also help. Yes, Lawal, you can check at any time in your project. Okay. That's why you're the project manager. That's why we said we are treating this study under project monitoring and control. Okay, so let's go straight to um yeah, it's cost, yeah, cost variance. Okay, cost variance analysis. Okay, more questions are now coming. All right, so let's go back to performance tracking tonight. Why do we need to track performance? Okay, why is it important to track performance? It's very key to track performance because as just like as human beings, every day of our lives, we try to ask ourselves, have we fared better than yesterday? So if you fared better than yesterday, it means there's something you're doing better. Okay. And that's why every project is a living entity. Okay. Every project is alive. All right. So it needs to breathe and breathe very well. So performance tracking is actually good for business because it can help you check whether you're succeeding or whether you have actually failed or you're failing. It also helps us to look at are we actually getting things right? The products or the services that we have churned out or we are involved in, it helps us to adjust. Thank you, comrade. It helps us to adjust, know where we are doing it well, we're not doing well, things like that. Okay. So they are a tool that help us to understand, manage, and improve what we do and what our organizations do. Okay. All right. So some of the things performance measurement tells us is that it helps us to know how well we are doing. It also gives us insights if we are meeting our goals. It helps us to understand those areas that where we need to change or make some modifications. It gives us insight also to know our customers are dissatisfied. It also helps us to look at those processes in terms of statistics, like the variables we've talked about in cost variance. It gives us an insight how well we are doing statistically across board, maybe with the first month or across the quarter or across different months, years. We can be able to compare and contrast. And it also helps us to check where we are at the moment and where we need to make improvements if necessary. That's why performance measurement is important. Yeah, Grace, you can say accountability platform, but it's way beyond accountability alone. Okay, so it encompasses accountability. When you talk about performance, how well have you fared on your project? Is either you're doing well or you're not doing well, and the results are there, clear for all to see. You can hide performance. Okay, so performance measurement is actually that overall management system which helps us to look at both prevention, detection, which is actually aimed at achieving conformance of the work, the product or service to meet customer expectations and requirements. So whatever we are doing, all the stakeholders in the project must be able to say, yes, I think what we have, there's value for money. Okay, there's value for the resources which we are putting up in this particular project in this regard. So It also helps us to optimize the processes, how efficient it can be, how effective we can be. It also helps you to look at what is the effort of the team members about this project. Are they so everybody, it checkmates everything. That's why we call it a holistic management system, an overall management system. So whatever we are doing, we'll discuss, we show clearly that yes, we have done well. So if a building is meeting standard, whoever looks at it at the word go or sees it from afar can be able to say, yes, I think, yes. So, yeah, Stephen, I also agree with you. Okay, helps us to know which of our actions can be used for similar projects. So it improves scalability as well. So a whole lot comes on board these processes to see how well we have fared. So these actions actually they occur in a continuous cycle, which allows us for expansion, improvement um, of the work processes or the products, so that we can be able to know which techniques are better than the others, which ones should we use, what methodology works better than the others in this particular project, and do we need to scale them maybe to the next level of work that needs to be done. So thinking about our projects can yes, yes, we can say that performance measurement is a means of accountability, because you are definitely going to give account of what you have done on the project. So accountability is a measure of, is one of the indices of your performance index. Okay, so that is it. So we can actually say that. So in terms of performance tracking, so we can actually look at in terms of Okay, can I confirm? Can you hear me, please? Hello, can I confirm? Can you hear me? Okay, all right. So there should be a feedback mechanism in place. Okay, there should be a feedback mechanism in place, which so when we talk about the feedback um mechanism, okay, it's not going to overshadow performance, but rather it's going to be embodied in performance. Okay, because it's out of what you have done that people would evaluate your work. So in terms of what you've done and the magnitude of what you have done. Okay, for example, we have a president. Okay, so or we have a governor. They're involved in different projects, okay, both infrastructure and otherwise, okay. So they are being evaluated based on the work that they have done and how much of work that have been done over time. So that's performance for you, okay. So it gives you in terms of a number what exactly has been done and how much of work have actually been done at that time. So performance tracks objectives, it tracks measurements, it has criterias and also some characteristics. Okay, so when we look at the objectives that it focuses on, okay, so in terms of meeting the objectives of the project, so it means that there are baseline measurements that your project cannot go below, okay? And it also helps us to determine where we need improvement, okay, where we've made gains and where we've made losses. We can also be able to compare what we have achieved with the goals that has been set for the project, and what information that we need both as an individual and as a team in terms of evaluating project performance. And we should also understand that the project is not managed by emotion. So we are not handling the project based on emotion. So we've talked about the objective aspect of performance tracking. So we'll talk about the so we look at what should be measured is frequently asked by managers or even teams. So sometimes we can actually measure in terms of performance the human resources, the customers, production, it could be suppliers, it could be the marketing team, it could be the sales, it could be anything. As long as it is on board, yes, that's the essential element of performance tracking. That's what we're talking about tonight. Okay, so we could actually measure um, whatever is within the scope of that particular project. Okay, so and it will help us to understand what we are doing. And in terms of criteria, every business, every project have some measurements in place that can be adopted. So sometimes you want to make it very simple, okay? Like where you're having a mobile app, okay? So if you're using a mobile, you're implementing a mobile app, then it should be, the user interface should be easy, relatively easy to interface with. It should be user friendly, okay? Um, of course, it should be technology compliant, so and very visible. So it all depends on what you want to see. So you set a criteria based on that. Okay, so that's performance. And we look at generally the functions or the characteristics of performance measurement is where there are seven in number. Okay, in terms of quantity, if quantity measurement is involved, so we can actually look at how many units of production or processes are involved, how much resources do we require for a particular output, what time will be needed, how accurate should it be. Okay, remember we talked about quality assurance. Okay, so how accurate should the activities in that project be, what would be the functions, how accountable, okay, in terms of systems, in terms of standards, in terms of policies, in terms of procedures. So those structures that actually support the success of the project are what will drive functionality. Sometimes you just hear of where app functionality. So without those processes, it will not work. Okay. Then we look at aesthetics. How good does it feel? Okay, so it all depends if it's a product. So how would the building, the end product look like? If you're making a cake, how appealing would it look like? So whatever we're doing in the project, it should be appealing generally. Okay, and then what is the service quality that you are providing? So these are things that we need to consider in terms of performance, because if the performance, can accuracy be viewed as quality also? Well, yeah, you can include as quality, because for some persons we want to say that we need to be sure. A lot of us want to deal with accurate, we want to be as accurate as possible on your project. So you can include it as part of your characteristics. These are just basic Okay, there could be more. Okay, but you have to set a baseline performance for whatever you're doing. Okay, so why do we actually need to measure performance? It helps us to reduce some of the variances or variations that we observe in projects. It helps us to also evaluate in terms of what we are doing. Okay, that's a self-assessment. Okay, how well a process has fared or is faring, and include projections for improvements. Okay, and then also to be able to monitor continuous improvement. Okay, so by continuous improvement, we're saying that we want to measure and identify wherever there are issues, and be able to tackle them so that the project can improve. Okay, and then on the management aspect, we need to also look at, without a measurement, there is no way to be certain we are meeting value added objectives. So we need to holistically look at the entire process and see whether we are actually doing so well or we've not actually done well. So it's also part of it. So generally, that's what exactly performance measurement is about. We need to understand clearly that performance management is very important process of project management. We need to track whatever we are doing, either at the beginning, in between, or as the project begins to wind down. Okay, so it's very key, it's very important. I know that we've tried to assimilate a whole lot tonight, but I'm sure you can get everything in one day. um, Try to refresh your memory with a few of these things we've discussed today. Go over it over time. I'm sure that you're going to get it more clearly. Okay, so it's part of it, but we'll get there, and it's all going to help us to get. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone tonight. I know it's not really been so easy, okay, but we'll get there. By the next class, we will talk about how we can manage changes and in our projects, okay, and see how we can improve our project. So we may take a few. Next class, we are going to have a few little recap, and then we'll delve into managing changes in our project. So I want to say there's a whole lot. So don't expect you're going to get everything all in one go tonight. Just take a breather, rest, and refresh yourself. Hopefully, Thursday is going to be more less econometric. Okay, so we're done with econometrics. So we will delve back into um, yeah. So a lot of time was actually spent on questions, and yeah, the second aspect was done in a hurry to allow us to take notes. But don't worry, we'll do some recap in the next class. Okay, we'll talk a little about performance management and tracking, and then we'll look at changes. If there are questions, we'll take them. So let's try to come early enough, and then we can do 30 minutes of questions being interactive, and then we use the next 30 minutes for the day's class, and then in the second half we would look at something also very interesting. On behalf of Digital Skillup Africa, my name is Kingsley once again, and with me on the coach tonight has been Nancy Baba Ali. We say a big thank you for being here, and get your questions ready. Come early in class next on Thursday. We will treat that, and then before we move into the day's session. Once again, have a restive night. Bye bye.